The Heavenly Demon. Can't Live a Normal Life. By Sanchin. Chapter 299. A Moment of Decision. Part 1. The people who passed the recruitment test gathered in a designated area on the first day. All complex formalities were left out of the registration process, and Chris briefly explained the schedule for the day. Congratulations on joining Lord Roman's private army. From this moment onward, you will undergo a brief registration process to become one of us officially. Wait for your name to be called, and please diligently cooperate with us in the process, he said. Scott was the 98th to be called. The process, Chris explained, was held in the barracks to shade from the sunlight. 10 names were called at once to enter the building, and it didn't take long for Scott's name to be called. When the spy entered the building, he found individual rooms separated from each other. He couldn't help feeling nervous since it appeared like they intentionally separated the rooms for security reasons. Scott entered one of the rooms to find a man sitting in front of a small desk, looking through some documents. He raised his gaze once he heard Scott enter. "Please, have a seat." "Thank you," Scott anxiously replied. "You don't have to get so nervous. This is just a simple process to cross-check the information you wrote on your application. All you have to do is honestly reply. So, let's begin. Scott, you're 38 years old and from Umberto Kingdom, correct?" the man asked. "Yes. As you may be aware, serving in Lord Roman's private army is considered an extremely unique position. Unlike average soldiers, you will receive 30 silvers monthly and earn additional hazardous duty incentives if put in dangerous missions like wars. Do you have a family?" Scott anxiously gulped his dry throat, caught off guard by the man's unexpected question. Though he came from Umberto, his family was currently in Kronos. So, to Scott's ears, it almost sounded as if the man was trying to interrogate him to find out if he had any connections with the Wicked Empire. He seemed a bit shaken at first. He hesitated briefly, not knowing how to reply, but eventually chose to give an honest answer, worried his lie could ruin everything. "Yes, I do," Scott answered. "Are you currently living with them?" "My wife and 2 children are currently staying in Kronos," he replied. "Well, that confirms the information we have about you. I ask you this because we will have to meet your wife to offer your death gratuity if anything happens to you while carrying out missions for Dmitri. Do you agree with this?" the man continued. "Huh?" Scott was stunned. First, shivers ran down his back, realizing that Dmitri had already obtained information about him. Then, he was perplexed by the man's question regarding the death gratuity. Scott asked the man in a trembling voice, feeling a sense of guilt in his conscience. "So, are you saying my family can receive the money even if they reside in Kronos?" Pause. The man paused for a second, then looked up at Scott with a smile. "Yes. As long as you don't cause any problems, nothing will stop us from offering the money to your family." The first step of the registration process ended. Various thoughts crossed Scott's mind as he went to the next area. Does he mean Dmitri will accept me as its own regardless of my past as long as I don't cause any problems? He felt his heart sink when he heard the man's response. It felt like his identity had been already exposed, but no one in Dmitri made a deal out of it for some reason. To his understanding, Dmitri had recently firmly established a system to reward those who had contributed meritorious services and rewarded those who were either killed or injured in action. However, he couldn't embrace the fact that he, too, could receive the same compensation with pure joy since he was a spy, after all. For the time being, he complied with the procedures. The next area he was led to was the heated forge where sturdy men were busily working. "This way," said one blacksmith. The man with a long, rough beard and a safety apron over his body began slowly observing Scott's body as his shredded muscles twitched. "So, I heard you were a mercenary. You're certainly in good shape. The only issue is that one of your legs is slightly crooked because your legs differ in length. Also, your hilt will need to be relatively thin since your fingers are slightly short. It would be best if you had a customized weapon to fit your body, right?" the blacksmith asked. "I'm aware of it. Why do you ask? Scott said. Well, isn't it obvious? It's because I'm here to customize your weapons since you are Lord Roman's private soldiers. Scott's eyes widened in shock at the blacksmith's response. There was nothing extremely particular about customizing a weapon for an individual. However, a large budget was required to forge customized weapons for a large group of men. After all, only people like Aura Knights had the money to afford customized weapons in the first place. Scott never expected he would receive such special treatment from the start. Are you customizing weapons for all of the soldiers? But that would require too much money, asked Scott. Of course, it'll be expensive. It isn't an easy task for even the blacksmiths of Dimitri, home to the best blacksmiths on the continent. That is why average soldiers receive armor and weapons that are already forged. But Lord Roman's private army is different, the blacksmith replied. He thoroughly measured Scott's body and recorded everything while replying to Scott's questions. Soldiers who serve directly under Lord Roman's command are considered special here in Dimitri. Whenever danger strikes our lands, Lord Roman and his private army are always the first to respond and fight against our enemies on the front lines. That is why people like myself are here to provide the best support possible. After all, what could a blacksmith do on a battlefield after spending my entire life holding a hammer? The least I can do is to help increase your survivability by forging the best customized armor and weapon for you, don't you agree? The blacksmith continued in a firm, bold voice. He meant every word he said. The people of Dimitri, including the blacksmith, expressed their gratitude to Roman daily. Roman Dimitri was the savior of Dimitri. He was the one who brought prosperity to Dimitri by developing the land's iron ore industry and boosting the people's pride by solving Dimitri's problem with his own hands. Of course, not everyone liked Roman. Some resented him after losing their loved ones to Kronos' invasion. They blamed Roman for not compromising with the empire, which they believed led to their loved ones' deaths. However, it didn't take long for them to pull themselves together and settle their heartaches. They were convinced Roman was a true leader who deserved their genuine and utmost respect when they heard how he made Kronos pay 100 times more for the pain they had caused, and when he promised proper treatment to the fallen after his return. From then on, Dimitri's cohesiveness grew even stronger to become an impregnable fortress. Countless people declared their determination to go as far as to throw their bodies into the burning flames for the sake of Roman. The blacksmith was one of them. Though a part of his heart still ached after losing his family, he was proud that they had died for the sake of Dimitri. The blacksmith treated Scott with sincerity, although this was their first time meeting each other. Though he knew nothing about Scott, the fact that he was now a soldier of Lord Roman was enough for him to give his best support. This was what Roman meant to the people. It wasn't easy for Scott to accept such sentiments since this was his first time experiencing Dimitri, which he had only heard through rumors. Trust me. I will prepare the best armor and weapon for you in a few days, said the blacksmith. A customized weapon was only the beginning of the endless surprises. The best part of everything Scott experienced during the day was the living quarters. He was led to his final destination after finishing the process, only to find a sight he couldn't easily grasp. This is the place where I'll be staying. Yes. All private soldiers are provided with individual rooms so you can have your privacy. And if you decide to live here with your family, we will provide you with a bigger place so that you can live with them. Scott's eyes shivered. He was utterly perplexed. A neatly organized, large room was something beyond his imagination. He had also heard the rumors that Dimitri promised the best treatment to those who devoted their lives to the kingdom. But never in his wildest dream did he expect Dimitri to provide the best compensation, customized weapons, and an ideal living environment. Scott unwittingly threw his body onto the cozy bed. It couldn't be compared to the dusty, shabby bed in the inn he was staying. It was large enough for a bulky man like himself to throw his body. The bed was soft, cozy, and warm. Honey. His eyes suddenly welled up, imagining the bright smiles his wife and children would have if they were together with him and Dimitri on this bed. Scott squeezed his eyes shut, knowing his family was in danger. Unfortunately, his family wasn't aware they were being held hostage in Kronos. And since Scott wasn't an essential person in the Empire, he knew Kronos wouldn't hesitate to harm his beloved family if he betrayed it. He had no choice but to fulfill his mission as a spy for the sake of his family. Dmitri helped him dream of a bright future for the first time. However, Scott had no future without his family. So he swallowed those newfound emotions the best he could. He couldn't let those feelings blur his judgment just after the first day. It wouldn't be too late to decide after he finished the training. Scott couldn't easily fall asleep that night with various thoughts crossing his mind. And it wasn't only Scott. All the spies who had kept their mouths shut struggled to fall asleep. The soldiers were gathered for their first training. We will be conducting basic training for the next 10 days. No one is to fall behind. Use every means possible to finish this training until the end together, said Roman. The new soldiers didn't fully understand what he meant then. If they hadn't heard him wrong, Roman said their first curriculum was basic training. However, no one expected the first training to be a loaded march carrying 90-pound full combat gear. A loaded march was a major part of military basic training. Scott wouldn't have been as stunned if it was the usual loaded march he was aware of, but the training grounds and the pace of the march completely caught him off guard. 30 minutes into the training, Scott felt his head spinning like crazy. Huff, huff. What on earth? The loaded march training was conducted in the mountains, involving fast hiking. The path was so steep that it almost felt like he had to crawl up. It would have been easier if the trainees were allowed to use their mana at least, but Roman forbade them. They were to conduct the training with sheer physical abilities. Scott was able to keep up the pace at first since he used to be a mercenary who had fought in countless wars before, but it didn't take long for him to run out of breath. He felt his neck choke up, desperately trying to keep up with the seniors almost running. Huff, huff, Scott gasped for air. They were fast. They were moving so fast that the distance between him and the seniors instantly widened the second he slowed down. And whenever he tried to pause, he could hear Chris yell, "Keep up the pace. Don't let yourself fall behind. We're on the battlefield. Do you think the enemies will spare your lives because you are carrying 90-pound gear and lack physical strength? Or are you intending to chase after your enemies at such a slow pace? Your life depends on your physical strength. If you think you can't keep up with this pace and are at your limit, then just black out with foam in your mouth. I promise to carry you from then on." Chris's fierce voice continued to echo into his ears. Scott got himself together and desperately clung on. What stunned him the most were the seniors. Unlike the newbies, like Scott, holding a dying face, the seniors seemed relaxed, as if they were out for a walk. That didn't mean they weren't tired. However, the loaded march was nothing but a basic training to them compared to the countless training exercises they had undergone. Scott was astonished. He knew they were beyond ordinary when fighting against them during the recruitment test, but was baffled to see how easily they marched forward through the rough mountainous path. Their physical strength wasn't built naturally. It was the fruit of the countless arduous training that they had endured. Scott soon ran out of breath. And when he lifted his gaze to the front, he grew curious of one thing. To his understanding, commanders typically didn't participate in the training. But for some reason, he saw Roman Dmitri at the front, leading the group. So he had to ask Hunt, who was walking by his side at the moment. "You're right. The typical commander would normally be busy yelling at his men while resting under the shades, but Dmitri is different. Because Lord Roman always leads us in the missions at the front lines, he wants us to feel and experience his pace. Do you understand what that means? If you can't keep up now, you don't deserve to follow Lord Roman on the battlefield," Hunt replied with a smile. Only then did Scott finally realize that this was the truth behind Dmitri, the truth that had shocked the continent and led Dmitri to countless victories. "So do your best. We're just getting started," said Hunt. Worried he would wash out before even beginning his secret mission, Scott felt shivers down his spine. Chapter 300. A Moment of Decision. Part 2. To live as a mercenary meant overcoming countless life-or-death situations. Scott had experienced countless battles as a mercenary and while working as a spy, and several times, he had traversed vast fields and mountains day and night just to survive. So, he was confident he would easily get through basic training with his physical strength. Though he wasn't a formidable or a knight, he believed his years of struggles as a mercenary wouldn't let him down. However, it only took half a day to push Scott to his limits. "I'm going to die at this rate," he muttered in his mind. Scott was already running out of breath, and his mouth was completely dried up. No matter how many times he ate and drank during the march, it couldn't quench the nauseous feeling. The 90-pound gear felt like a few tons as time gradually passed. Nevertheless, he had to keep marching forward because Roman Dmitri refused to stop. It almost seemed like he had no limits as he led the group through the rough mountainous terrain. The soldiers were steadily driven to their limits as the march continued up the steep, rocky path. Huff, huff, Scott gasped for air. He was on the verge of giving up. He contemplated the thought countless times as he continued forward. He swallowed the nauseous feeling in his throat, thinking it would be better for him to pass out at this rate. Whip. Plop. Then, suddenly, one trainee lost consciousness. While there were trainees like Scott, experienced veterans, there were also those who were mere commoners. Even enduring with one's grit had its limits. Eventually, one trainee collapsed to the ground, losing consciousness. Scott anxiously watched the whole scene. He was curious to see what would happen to the trainee since Roman had said he wouldn't let anyone fall behind. "I'll carry him." "Hunt, you can carry his gears." "All right." Scott couldn't believe his eyes. As if they expected the situation, one senior picked up the trainee on the ground onto his back, and another grabbed his gears. Then, the loaded march continued. Not even a minute had passed since the man passed out, but the seniors instantly caught up with the group and continued forward as if nothing happened. There was no way they were humans. Scott was on the brink of dying, struggling to carry himself through, but the seniors were indifferent even while carrying another gear and person on their backs. Scott couldn't possibly fathom what they had gone through for them to be this competent. The soldiers who used to be ordinary people just like himself had become beings beyond the ordinary, spending years under Roman Dmitri. The mercenary endured the pain, clenching his teeth. He knew he couldn't give up so easily, watching his seniors carrying the injured on their backs in front of him. However, as the training continued, he belatedly realized that willpower alone couldn't get him through. The trainees were utterly worn out after just one day of basic training. The training continued even after the loaded march, and only after they were told the training for the day ended did the trainees drop to the ground. They needed some time to catch their breath. Their faces had turned pale by the intense training, and some were even vomiting with their faces on the ground. Scott wasn't an exception. He dropped his entire body on the ground with a pale face after going through several critical moments during the training. It almost felt like he was in a living hell. His body trembled in fear, realizing it was just the first day of training in Dmitri. At that moment, one trainee beside him raised his voice angrily. "Fuck this. How can they call this training? This is torture. Torture. We train to enhance our physical strength, but forcing us to undergo this training will only ruin our bodies. We should seriously consider asking him to adjust the curriculum if he intends to continue such a method." Some nodded to the man's remarks in agreement. To their understanding, every physical training was conducted in several steps depending on the trainee's strength. Thus, without the steps, Roman's intense training utterly stunned the group. Frankly, people like Scott wanted to give up if it weren't for their missions as spies. "You should just quit if that's your mindset." Someone must have read the man's mind. Another trainee sitting at the side with a relatively relaxed face bluntly said. All of the trainees turned to him and realized he was the applicant who used to serve Dmitri as an ordinary soldier after observing his face. "Huh? What did you just say?" the man grumbled. "I said you should just quit if you're here to whine," the trainee repeated. His name was Randolph. He glared at the other trainees and continued. "Why do you think Lord Roman is conducting this training? To enhance our physical strength? Or to torture us, like you said? You're fools. This is a part of Dimitri's everyday life. Lord Roman's private army endured this hellish training daily. And it was their tenacious physical strength that allowed them to achieve the countless victories, which you must have heard 1,000 times on your way to Dimitri. The private army of Roman was considered exceptional even within Dimitri. The soldiers of Dimitri had to acknowledge Roman's private soldiers when watching them endure the arduous training. You must have also heard. Countless lives had been lost when Kronos invaded Dimitri. And among those who died was one of my comrades in arms. His name was Henderson. Everyone in Dimitri, including myself, doesn't want such a horrible incident to be repeated. And the only way we can prevent it is by becoming even stronger, said Randolph. The deaths of the loved ones, including Henderson's, left a hole in the people's hearts. Not even Roman's compensation could fully heal the wounds inside their hearts. And the lives of those who held Henderson dearly were destined to change. That was why Randolph chose to join the private army. It wasn't because he wanted to enjoy the privileges as Roman's private soldier but to prevent another sacrifice like Henderson's from occurring. So, he gritted his teeth and endured the training. While people like Scott were staggering on their feet, desperately trying to keep up with the group, Randolph was in the back, supporting and helping other trainees in the back, pushing their gears. He did so not because he was physically stronger than Scott but because giving up was never an option in his mind. His strong determination helped him get through the training even while holding a dying face. Our seniors didn't abandon us during the hellish training. They carried us through by carrying us on their backs and holding our gear. The battlefield will be no different. The moment we become a member of Dimitri, they will do everything possible to help us survive even in the deadliest battlefields. Do you finally understand what you have signed up for? You have become comrades in arms with such outstanding men, so quit whining over one basic training if you're not here to become a burden. You're completely mistaken if you're here just for the privileges. Dimitri isn't a utopian world you will find in your dreams, Randolph finished. Scott was at a loss for words as he watched Randolph turn around to catch his breath. Others also remained speechless. They were deeply moved by his remarks, realizing they had become companions of formidable knights who would never abandon them. Only then did they finally realize what they had gotten themselves into, what it truly meant to serve as Roman Dimitri's private army in Dimitri. 10 days had passed since the training began. Not a single trainee dropped out. Obviously, some endured the training with strong aspirations to join Dimitri. At the same time, there were also the spies who had to withstand the hellish training in order to confirm the secrets of Dimitri's martial arts. The time had finally come for them to bear their fruits. After gathering all the trainees on the training grounds, Chris explained the next curriculum of the basic training, mastering the mana breathing technique. I'll first briefly explain the concept of how to use your core, he said. The brief concept was already presented to the people by Roman during the demonstration conference. However, Chris had to explain the precise details for the trainees to practice. The soldiers couldn't hide their expectations as they listened carefully. Martial arts were basically the essence of the swordsmanship revolution. The trainees knew how valuable the opportunity was to receive Dimitri's guidance in the changing future ahead. They carefully listened to every word Chris said. They were utterly amazed learning how to store one's mana in the core and use it to control the mana when manifesting it. They couldn't understand why they couldn't think of such an efficient method. It didn't seem so complicated once they heard the answer, but it was something they couldn't have dared imagine without knowing it. The martial art you will be practicing from today is called the breathing technique of the courageous spirit, announced Chris. They finally began the main training. The trainees were told to sit on the ground with their legs crossed. They struggled a bit sitting in awkward positions but tried their best to practice the breathing technique of the courageous spirit following Chris's instructions. The instructions continued. The trainees sensed their minds steadily immersed in their consciousness while focusing on manifesting the breathing technique of the courageous spirit. Chris's voice slowly faded into the background as Scott tried to follow the instructions to sense his mana. I can't sense a thing. The key to the breathing technique was sensing one's mana. It was impossible to move on to the next step without feeling it. However, Scott couldn't sense the mana Chris described, no matter how hard he focused his mind. It was an expected outcome since Scott wasn't an Aura Knight. He had tried everything he could to become one while working as a mercenary, however, achieving a reality beyond his talents was impossible. So, he gave up on learning how to manifest his aura by the time he reached his 30s. He eventually concluded it was foolish to waste his time, effort, and money to accomplish the impossible. In the end, he hit the wall. He was convinced not even the breathing technique of the courageous spirit could win him the golden opportunity. An hour, 2 hours, and 3 hours passed. Scott concentrated his mind on the breathing technique. He had no better choice since he had signed up for the training. So, he did what he could despite knowing it would go in vain. But suddenly, a strange feeling began to wrap around his body. "No way," he whispered in shock. It was a strange feeling that felt warm at first, then cold the next second. The sensation brushed over his skin. Sensing the bizarre feeling, Scott stopped the breathing technique and gazed down at his core in shock. Did I just feel my mana? This was undoubtedly a miracle. Scott felt his heart thump in excitement. The more he got used to the breathing technique of the courageous spirit, the more he was perplexed by its remarkable effects. Impossible. Scott had spent most of his life on the battlefield. He had paid expensive money to receive guidance from prominent Aura Knights of Kronos, believing only the aura could protect his life from danger. Nevertheless, he failed to learn how to manifest his aura. Not even the most renowned knights nor the best techniques could help him manifest the power. Failing to sense his mana, Scott rebuked the knights for tricking him, but the only response he could get was that the Aura Knights were considered precious because not everyone could learn to manifest their mana. The mercenary couldn't say another word. He could not argue about anything since it was his fault for lacking talent. So, he gave up. All this time, he believed the aura to be a technique impossible to master. Words weren't enough to describe his euphoria as he sensed the mana brushing his skin. Alexander's era is over. This is the beginning of a new era. From now on, Roman Dmitri deserves to be called the creator of aura. He has the technique to teach even people like me to sense my aura in just a few hours. If I can offer information about the breathing technique of the courageous spirit to the Empire, Kronos will surely guarantee wealth and prosperity. The Empire will be sure to reward me for accomplishing my mission. Scott finally achieved his objective. All he had to do now was to steal the information and present it to the Empire. His family would be safe if he could explain how to practice the breathing technique of the courageous spirit using the magic telegram in his pocket. However, he couldn't easily make up his mind. Aside from the fact that Dmitri treated its people wholeheartedly, he was utterly stunned by how effective the breathing technique of the courageous spirit was and how Dmitri easily shared the information despite knowing spies were still amongst them. If Dmitri had the potential to develop such remarkable techniques, perhaps it could end up replacing Kronos and begin a new era. History always proved that a rise of a new supremacy followed the age of upheaval. And Scott believed he was now standing in the middle of one. The mercenary believed he was standing in a moment of decision but was hesitant to decide, knowing that the lives of his family were on the line. The training for the day finally came to a close. With the first day of training for the breathing technique of the courageous spirit completed, Chris stepped forward and briefly explained how the training would unfold moving forward. For the time being, we will focus your training on mastering the breathing technique of the courageous spirit. But suppose any of you manage to master it quickly or make any meritorious contributions. In that case, I will teach them a new martial art that matches your mana elemental type, he announced. The trainees were stunned at Chris's words. The breathing technique of the courageous spirit was already shocking enough. They couldn't believe there was more to Dimitri's martial arts. What do you mean by a new martial art? Are you saying there is a technique even stronger than this? One trainee asked. Chris couldn't hide his smile. It was true that most of the Dmitri soldiers only mastered the breathing technique of the courageous spirit. However, people like himself and Kevin were granted additional information about different martial arts. Other private soldiers also received teachings to master new martial arts. Although the breathing technique of the courageous spirit was enough to get them through most battles, Roman judged they also needed an opportunity to move on to the next step after the war against Kronos. The premise to your question is frankly wrong. The breathing technique of the courageous spirit isn't considered special to begin with. Dmitri has already established the requirements to practice martial arts, and the breathing technique of the courageous spirit is only the basic to help train beginners, said Chris. The trainees didn't know what to say to his words. Regardless of its truth, it was a statement they couldn't easily grasp. They were bewildered. Roman had already introduced the system he implemented in the demonic cult to the world, thus, he believed Dmitri deserved a greater privilege than what the world had received. So, he chose to teach his subordinates techniques yet to be revealed to the public. There wasn't a single lie to Chris's words. The breathing technique was the most fundamental martial art, disclosed to the public in Murim. The undercover agents who couldn't decide between Kronos and Dmitri felt their hearts begin to waver as they listened to Chris's words. Chapter 301. A Moment of Decision. Part 3. That night, Scott stared down at his magic telegram with a serious face, contemplating in his room. Do I report this or not? To fulfill my spy mission or become a Dimitri's private army member? Words weren't enough to describe how amazed he was after all he had witnessed during his time in Dmitri during the past 10 days. Sometimes, he even considered giving up on the training, comparing himself to the monster strength his seniors showed. However, he chose to cling on, reminded of his family and their safety. In the end, he couldn't give up, threatened by Kronos' menaces. After all, Kronos was still the continent's superpower, no matter how much Dmitri had proved itself recently. It was the undeniable truth. Scott stood firm in his decision to remain loyal to Kronos for the sake of his family. But it didn't take long for him to start doubting his decision. He began to waver from his decision 3 hours into his training to master the breathing technique of the courageous spirit. When he started to sense his mana, he realized this wasn't something he could take lightly. The Aura Knights told me I didn't have the talents to manifest my aura. But if Dmitri has the knowledge to help me sense my mana in less than a day, it shouldn't be impossible for them to teach me how to manifest my aura. Plus, what if Dmitri decides to teach the technique to its people, which can assist people like me to manifest their aura in the future? Dmitri will end up possessing thousands, no, hundreds of thousands of Aura Knights in the future. In other words, it will only be a matter of time before Dmitri surpasses the Kronos Empire. The power gap between Dmitri and Kronos was clearly apparent as of now. However, Scott believed Dmitri would slowly but surely close the gap and eventually surpass the Empire as years passed. It was a revolution. He believed Dmitri would indeed become the future superpower of Salamander, like how Alexander helped Kronos reign over the continent by creating the aura. Not to forget, Chris had mentioned that the breathing technique of the courageous spirit was a low-level martial art, the tip of Dmitri's iceberg. Scott was inevitably lost in his thoughts, unable to decide his future. Plus, knowing Roman Dmitri was a ruthless person who would punish those who betrayed him, the mercenary couldn't easily make up his mind, worried about the consequences he would have to pay if he leaked the information to Kronos. Scott's hair was disheveled, and his fingernails were bitten by the time the sun began to set. He couldn't easily decide since his family's lives were on the line. Kronos will protect me and my family until the end. They will inevitably abandon me if something goes wrong, regardless of my safety. However, Dmitri is different. I'm confident they won't leave me as long as I remain loyal to Lord Roman, like how the senior soldiers carried the gear for the fallen trainees. I would rather become allies with such a group of men than with people who would quickly abandon me. Scott finally made up his mind. He believed it would be best to help his family escape from Kronos by contacting his close friend rather than stealing information from Dmitri. Beep. Hey, Pike. Meet up with my family secretly and escape the Empire as soon as you get my message. The future in Dmitri is brighter than 1,000 suns. I witnessed it with my own eyes. I chose to risk my life for this bright future rather than devote my life to an empire that doesn't even care about my safety. So, escape the empire with my family. Let's start anew in Dimitri, a kingdom that will care for us dearly, he whispered into the magic telegram. Pike was one of his mercenary colleagues. Scott had reached out to him before leaving Kronos just in case things went for the worst. Beep. Scott. Congratulations on becoming an official member of Dimitri. However, the voice that echoed from the other side of the telegram wasn't Pike's. Scott dropped the telegram in shock, realizing he wasn't talking to his colleague. Tap. What in the world? He stuttered. He couldn't understand what was happening. The mercenary gazed down at the device with a dazed look for a while. Meanwhile, Chris was in his office, organizing his thoughts. Today is the decisive day. The spies who learned about the breathing technique of the courageous spirit for the first time will decide their futures, each standing in the moment of decision. Dimitri already knew there were spies among the trainees. Yet, Roman Dimitri chose to share the breathing technique, aware they could leak the details. Thus, he deliberately chose to do so in order to send a clear message to the world. By allowing the spies to leak the details of his technique, he wanted the world to learn what Dimitri was truly capable of doing. Simultaneously, Roman wanted to show the spies their presence couldn't intimidate him. After all, Roman intended to make those who leaked the information pay the price without failure. He had no intention of sparing the lives of the spies still remaining in Dimitri just because he spared those who voluntarily revealed themselves during the recruitment test. Roman made it clear that he would punish those who dared to betray him. So, the spies hiding among the trainees were put to the test under Haumann's close watch. We, including myself, suggested we should prevent information regarding the breathing technique from being leaked to Lord Roman, but he didn't seem concerned. He said preventing the information from leaking was already inevitable the moment we decided to teach it to the soldiers of the Dimitri army. However, he did say he would punish those who dared betray him. Though we have allowed the spies to join the private army, we will kill those who intend to continue their missions, nonetheless. Chris thought in his mind. He was reported about Scott just now. Scott must have thought he could avoid Dimitri's surveillance using his magic telegram, but unfortunately, the magic disturbance device installed all across Dimitri made it impossible for him to reach his desired point of contact. The second he contacted the Kronos Empire, he would have immediately lost his head to the soldiers storming his room. The night grew darker as time passed. The pitch-black darkness set the perfect atmosphere for people to contemplate betrayal. Chris calmly leaned his back against his chair and patiently waited, curious how the night would unfold. At that moment. Knock knock. May I come in? A familiar voice echoed outside his office. Chris was sure it was one of the spies who had come to see him last night after making up his mind. Come in, Chris answered. The door opened. The person entering the office came in with a determined face, just as Chris expected. Is there still a chance for me to vow my allegiance to Dimitri if it's not too late? The man standing before Chris was Fred, the captain of the Memphis Knights. Fred's story was more complicated than it was known. Though it was true that he left Kronos for his family's safety, that wasn't everything behind his reason. I used to be a loyal servant of the Emperor in Kronos. I vowed my allegiance to Marquis Memphis per His Majesty's order and was sent by him. To be honest, many thoughts crossed my mind during my time here. I was amazed by how Lord Roman revealed the concept of the core during the swordsmanship demonstration without hesitation and even sincerely considered remaining here in Dimitri after watching how genuinely this country treated its people. So here I am, risking my life to betray the Empire. I may end up dead for this decision, said Fred. He swallowed the fear emerging inside his heart. His eyes shivered as he struggled to continue. Chris calmly sat in his seat and listened. The people that came to Dimitri with me aren't my real family. They are fake, and my real family is currently held hostage by the Empire. If I fail to fulfill my duty, they will inevitably face brutal deaths after being ruthlessly tortured. So please, I beg of you, accept me as your own if you have a plan in mind to rescue my family. If not, please spare my life and let me go like you spared the spies during the final test. I promise not to say a word about the breathing technique. I'll carry the secret to my grave. All I seek is refuge for my family by returning to Kronos. I will never betray Dmitri, Fred continued. He appealed to emotions. Frankly, he desired to remain in Dmitri and live here. However, the circumstances didn't allow that. Knowing he couldn't solve the situation alone, he decided to reveal everything to Chris, aware it could cost his life. It would inevitably mean the end for him if there wasn't a way to save his family. He knew Dmitri wouldn't naively just let him leave after all that he had revealed. We already know who you are and that the people you brought to Dmitri aren't your family. If you truly desire to become a member of Dmitri, answer my questions honestly, Fred. According to our intel, we received information that the Emperor of Kronos controls his people by mind controlling them. Do you remember losing a fragment of your memory recently, or did you sense anything strange about yourself? Tell me the truth if you felt anything similar even once, said Chris. Hellman had already infiltrated deep into Kronos. While sorting out all the intelligence they gathered, they realized that most of the Emperor's peers shared a common problem. They appeared to have experienced partial memory loss and occasional lapses in their memories. Those were undoubtedly signs of mind control. The agents of Hellman were able to identify that the actions taken by his peers were coincidentally done for the sake of the Emperor alone. Thus, the Information Guild could reach a reasonable suspicion that the Emperor was mentally controlling the people around him. Obviously, people like Scott weren't significant enough to be victims. But in the case of Fred, Chris believed there was a chance the knight could have been a victim. Actually, I do. Fred replied with a stunned look. Hearing Chris's words, the knight recalled what his wife said to him before they left for Kronos. She seemed worried about his recent absent-mindedness. Follow me. I'll show you how you can save yourself and your family, said Chris, standing up from his seat. Fred followed Chris out of the office. He was led to a hidden chamber that led to the underground. To Fred's surprise, the secret area was surprisingly bright like daylight with people busily moving around. He couldn't believe his eyes at first. He was astonished to find a vast underground chamber hidden beneath Dmitri filled with people busily working amidst the dark, deep night. It was the headquarters of Hellman. The Information Guild had dramatically increased in size after Roman ordered Lucas to create Hellman. And the guild needed a vast space to handle all the information it gathered across the entire continent. Mages, including Felix, were mobilized to help create its headquarters. Thus, a secret hidden chamber, free from magic attacks, was found beneath Dmitri. Those who knew the truth would say that while Dmitri's forge burned fiercely throughout the day, the underground of Dmitri never grew dark. The people of Hellman tirelessly worked even while others were asleep. And it was thanks to their strenuous work and exceptional information gathering they found a clue to the Emperor's usage of mind control. Am I allowed to be here? If the Emperor really can use mind control, he will be able to take the information I saw today once he takes control of my body, said Fred. It doesn't matter. This place is completely free from any form of magic. Neither teleportation nor link can infiltrate the space. Plus, Dmitri isn't concerned at all, even if he succeeds in breaching our magic barrier, replied Chris. The two finally arrived at their destination. It was a small room for them to talk freely. Chris went straight to his point once they got seated. Let's first tackle the most important issue. The moment you vow to offer your loyalty to Dmitri, our Information Guild members will immediately move to rescue your family in Kronos. But I can't promise they will succeed without failure. Nevertheless, we have already bribed the people around your family, so I can say that the chances of failure are undoubtedly low if you are prepared to take the risk, stated Chris. Since when did you prepare all this? Fred said in shock. While you were off on your leave after the final test, we finished confirming your identities and prepared all circumstances pending your decisions. That was why we gave you a week off before the training. We used the time to prepare for whatever decision you may end up making. Fred was genuinely stunned. Not once had Dmitri lowered its guard. While boldly pushing forward with its plans, it had made detailed preparations to respond to all contingencies. The dukedom was no doubt an impregnable fortress in every way possible. The firm and sturdy walls built around Roman Dmitri were the foundation to establish an empire. Also, spies like you who have experienced mind control or loss of memory will be spending your time here for a month to cut the link inside your mind completely. We already have an existing precedent case. The study of magic resistance will help you establish a stable mental state and free you from the mysterious power, explained Chris. This was a solution laid out by Roman. Alexander's mind control proved to possess powerful dominance. But to Alexander's dismay, the magic resistance developed and practiced by Shalin was capable of perfectly neutralizing his force. Not even the illusion demon, who had driven the members of the Justice faction into fear, managed to break Shalin's mind, armed with magic resistance. Junghik Bek mastered their magic resistance while destroying Shalin. The ability, which wasn't particularly useful in his previous life, turned out to be the perfect weakness of Alexander's mind control magic. The recruitment of his private army and the swordsmanship demonstration, everything was carried out after perfect preparation. Most believed Dmitri's decision to be quite audacious. But not once did Roman make a reckless move. He was never the type to heedless risks in the first place. He had already prepared to respond to every possible contingency, leaving Fred in awe. Why would you go this far just for my sake? Am I really worth the risk for you to rescue my family and save me from Alexander's mind control? Fred asked with trembling eyes. No, Chris replied with a smile. Chris was never the type to take reckless risks either. Safety was his priority, as always. We honestly don't care how competent you are as an Aura Knight, Fred. The only reason we're doing this for you is because you are now a loyal servant of Dmitri and Lord Roman. Remember this. From the moment you vow your allegiance to Dmitri, and as long as you remain loyal, Dmitri will never be the first to abandon you, no matter what may happen, assured Chris. Chris's words moved Fred deeply. Unlike the dark and anxious days he spent at the center of Kronos' authority, it seemed like only bright and warm days awaited him here in Dmitri. Chris took the time to explain how people in Dmitri were treated on behalf of Dmitri. Dmitri was unlike any other kingdom or empire. Fred was certain the dukedom would undoubtedly rise as an empire one day, witnessing how it embraced its people with tolerance and generosity. I promise to serve Dmitri. I will risk my life for the sake of this land, said Fred. He spoke his genuine words. Chris slowly got up from his seat, smiling while gazing into Fred's passionate eyes. Good. Follow me. You will be staying here for a month to study magic resistance. And when you finish, I promise you will see your family safe and sound before your eyes, Chris said. Thank you so much. Fred also got up from his seat. He was now a member of Dmitri. As he followed Chris down the underground hallway, he saw someone coming toward him while being dragged by the soldiers. The man's body was entirely drenched in blood. When Fred finally approached the man, he couldn't help staring at him with perplexed eyes, finding his face familiar. He was none other than the man loudly conversing with everyone at the inn. It was Deshawn, the spy, who had revealed his identity and gave up on the final test. He was dragged across the hallway before Fred's eyes in a horrible state. Chapter 302. A Moment of Decision. Part 4. Deshawn's eyes widened once he recognized Fred's face. After escaping the soldier's grip, he rushed to the knight and desperately clung to his legs. Please. Please save me. Please save me from these, Yank. One of the soldiers caught up to him and grabbed him by his clothes. After apologizing, the soldier walked past Fred, pulling Deshawn's large body away. Fred could hear Deshawn's desperate and painful cries echoing from afar. Recalling Deshawn's face leaving the test grounds after honestly revealing his identity, Fred couldn't calm himself after what just happened before his eyes. What is the meaning of this? Was Dimitri's promise a lie all along? He asked Chris. Deshawn was undoubtedly a spy. In other words, Dmitri had no duty to keep its promise to a spy. However, Fred had believed in Roman's words. So he couldn't hide his shock after witnessing Deshawn's horrible state. don't get us wrong. We were planning on sparing Deshawn's life as promised. If only he had done as promised and kept all the information about Dimitri to himself after he left. However, Deshawn headed to Adelion as soon as he left Dimitri and reserved a slot on the warp gate to Valhalla. Not only that, but he also reached out to the person who requested the mission to him via the magic telegram. And what happened to him afterward is just as you've seen. Our information guild has been keeping a close watch on all of the spies. And we brought Deshawn here after he broke his promise with us, said Chris. Fred's gaze trembled as he sensed his mouth run dry. For some reason, an ominous feeling wrapped around him as he listened to Chris calmly explain the situation. In other words, Dimitri never intended to turn a blind eye to the spies all along. Instead, it was sheer confidence that it chose to let the spies go and accept them because they were certain they could get rid of us whenever they desired. Fred's mind raced. Shivers ran down his spine at just the thought of it. Chris had clearly stated that Dimitri had finished confirming all of the trainees' identities and that they were prepared to take necessary moves pending the spies' decisions. When he first heard Chris's words, he thought Dimitri made the preparations to help the spies. After all, they couldn't betray Kronos with their families held hostage in the Empire. But to his dismay, he had misunderstood the intentions behind Dimitri's preparations. Fred had naively left out the possibility that its preparations could be used against them, not for them. As a matter of fact, the people Dimitri had bribed could end up killing his family if he had chosen to leak the information he had obtained. His eyes shivered in fear, finally grasping what Chris's words truly implied. Complex feelings devoured his heart once he realized Dimitri was far more ruthless than anticipated. He was stunned at first. Then, fear engulfed him, which was followed by perplexity. He didn't know how he should grasp the situation. But eventually, he felt relieved, believing he had made the right choice to entrust his future to Dimitri. Fred, said Chris, looking straight into Fred's eyes. It almost seemed like the night was reading through all his thoughts and emotions. Never forget what happened today. And don't forget that Dimitri isn't some utopian world where all your wishes will come true. *****. While the spies were busy making up their minds, one man stood alone on the training grounds, training his swordsmanship. Swish. Rumble. Ares's blade split the night sky. Beads of sweat were scattered through the wind along with his aura. And his eyes were glowing with admiration as he fiercely swung his sword. I can't believe the answer I've been chasing my entire life was right here in Dimitri. He murmured. Ares, the proud prodigy, had created his own method after having doubts about Alexander's approach. In the end, he sought ways to elaborate the process of manifesting his aura instead of recklessly exploding it, which led him to seek ways to control his mana rather than to spread it throughout the body. And he proved his method right when he defeated Schneider, the continent's 12 blades. But Ares was far from satisfied. He knew there had to be more to develop a perfect method. For dozens of years, he spent his life seeking an answer as he trained his swordsmanship day in and day out. Roman's guidance was beyond shocking for a man who only thought about his sword. It was something he had never experienced before. The breathing technique of the courageous spirit far exceeds my expectations. I've tried everything I can to find a way to control my mana perfectly but failed. The breathing technique is what I've been searching for. It not only helped form a place in my body to store my mana but also showed me hundreds of passageways to manifest my mana from the core. This isn't knowledge that can be developed in just 1 or 2 years. But how did Roman Dimitri develop such a flawless method within a short period? Ares still couldn't understand. Unlike people like Scott, who required approximately 3 hours to sense their mana, Ares immediately felt his aura and learned to control it as soon as he followed Chris's instruction on the breathing technique. In just an hour, Ares was able to sense his mana subtly being stored inside his core. He couldn't forget the excitement and thrill wrapping his body from head to toe. He was utterly stunned. To his eyes, the breathing technique of the courageous spirit was a miracle. He was certain it would become the foundation for him to realize what he believed to be impossible. Could Chris's words be true? Could the breathing technique be the most basic martial art? Ares still couldn't believe what Chris said at the end of the training session. Whip. He withdrew his sword. The swordsmanship developed upon the breathing technique was far more destructive than any of the sword styles he had witnessed. It felt like he had finally found an answer to his unsolvable question. Thus, he couldn't easily believe Chris's words that the breathing technique was the most basic skill in martial arts. The breathing technique alone was already revolutionary to him, yet Chris stated there were still more. If Chris's words aren't a lie, then it must mean Roman Dmitri must have already secured a vast knowledge of martial arts. Most people still don't understand why Roman Dmitri chose to share the concept of the core with everyone. But the knowledge he shared must only be the tip of the iceberg to him, considering how he also chose to teach us and the spies the breathing technique of the courageous spirit. Just who are you, Roman Dmitri? What kind of a man in his 20s would be able to establish such a flawless method while denying the norm? This is just inconceivable. The method Ares developed may deny Alexander's approach, but in the end, it was just one of many methods built upon the concept Alexander had introduced. However, Roman Dmitri was different. He perfectly realized a concept not even prodigies like Ares could ever imagine. As one would put it, the more you know, the more you see. Since Ares had spent years studying ways to divert away from Alexander's approach and establish a new method, he couldn't help being utterly stunned after learning the breathing technique. In fact, Ares planned to leave Dmitri after receiving some degree of training. His honor as a swordsman was never his priority, after all. Roman Dmitri is making history. And it is only a matter of time before Alexander's legacy will be forgotten from Salamander's history overshadowed by Roman's reputation. Ares was certain. Roman Dmitri was completely different from Alexander. The young Dmitri was establishing a system without a single trace of flaw. So, Ares decided to change his mind. I should probably stay here in Dmitri a little longer since there is still more for me to learn. He made up his mind. He acknowledged Roman's profound knowledge and believed there was still more for him to learn here in Dmitri. Nonetheless, he had no intention of vowing his allegiance to Dmitri for eternity. But at least it appeared like Dmitri was worth his devotion. Little did Ares know that a young knight named Chris approached Roman with the same intention and eventually ended up dedicating his life to the young lord. Slide. Ares withdrew his blade. The night breeze was cool. Ares returned to his room, not knowing what kind of future awaited him. The Emperor of Kronos sat before Marquis Memphis. Alexander was inside the Emperor's body receiving the Marquis's report. We've lost contact with all the spies we've deployed to Dmitri, Your Majesty. At first, we thought it was just a simple technological problem with their communication devices, but seeing how there aren't any particular problems rising within Dmitri, we should consider the possibility of them betraying us. The Marquis bowed his head before the Emperor. He wouldn't dare raise his face, knowing his report would infuriate the Emperor. Those stupid bastards. How dare they betray me for Dmitri, the Emperor growled. The Emperor had deployed hundreds of Kronos spies to Dmitri's recruitment test. Though most of them failed to pass the final test, many survived, including Scott, and became Roman's private army members. Alexander was certain it would only be a matter of time before he obtained the detailed information regarding martial arts. However, failing to hear back from the spies after waiting several days, the Marquis had to report to the Emperor the possibility of their spies betraying the Empire. It didn't make any sense. Alexander couldn't believe the spies would dare turn their backs on the Empire despite the risks. Plus, my link connections with the pawns have been disrupted. Alexander noticed that the mind links to control his pawns infiltrated into Dmitri had grown weak. Even if the spies were to fail, he intended to use his mind link to steal the information. However, not even in his wildest dream did he expect his connections to be lost. He couldn't hide his bewilderment. It was yet too early to assume that the spies had betrayed the Empire. Nonetheless, the fact that things weren't going as planned was enough to make Alexander boil in anger. He could no longer suppress his rage. Kronos wasn't just an empire but a mighty one. There was a reason it was called an empire. For that reason, the people on the continent revered and feared its name. Kronos was where power prospered. There was evidently greater pride in becoming successful in Kronos than in some petty kingdoms such as Cairo, Hector, and Dimitri. However, the trend was steadily changing. The people no longer viewed Kronos as omnipotent after witnessing the empire constantly lose against Dimitri and pay 500,000 gold for war reparations. The walls that seemed impregnable for generations were steadily rupturing. After all, the precedent proved Kronos wasn't invincible, eventually leading to a devastating outcome: the spy's betrayal. Human beings are undoubtedly fools who are easy to forget. It sure is pitiful how easily they forget what the mighty empire of Kronos had accomplished over the course of history, the emperor said in a menacing voice. Now wasn't the time. But in the near future, the world would inevitably learn to fear him after facing his wrath. Marquis Memphis. Yes, Your Majesty. Dispose of the spies we sent to Dimitri. And bring all those related to them and show them what would happen to those who dared to betray the empire. Kronos can't be hindered by some rascals who are worth nothing more than worthless trash. The empire will always reign at the apex of all powers, declared the emperor. As you wish, Your Majesty. Marquis Memphis left the emperor's presence. A few days later, the Marquis's face turned pale after receiving reports that the spies' families had all fled. Alexander casually walked down the gloomy hallway. And when he finally arrived at his destination, the moonlight glittering through the open ceiling brightened the space around him. He stood before the dark red altar and smiled. 1 year. My conquest shall complete within a year, and I will reach immortality. Long before, when Alexander was enthroned as the emperor while being cheered by his people, he desired to live an immortal life. He wanted to enjoy every bit of this new life for eternity, since it was something he could have never cherished in his previous one. Though a low birth, he believed only a life of dominion could bring meaning to his life. So, he chose to accept black magic and continue his life as an immortal by controlling all the successors that came after him. He did so by establishing the ceremony to take over the emperor's bodies as a tradition within Kronos. All descendants of the imperial throne must pray for the empire's prosperity by performing a ritual to the ancestors on the day they celebrate their coming-of-age ceremony. The current emperor had done the same. He, who was born with great swordsmanship talents, had surrendered his mind and body to Alexander during his coming-of-age ceremony. From that day onward, the emperor of Kronos was nothing but another pawn among Alexander's countless collections. That was how Alexander controlled the current emperor, his father, and all the emperors before him. Though history recorded Alexander's death, he had lived on spiritually by taking over the emperor's minds and bodies with black magic. The world couldn't know this very truth. As Alexander said, human beings who could only live up to 100 years were prone to forget their mistakes and repeat them while blood and death piled upon the altar. Everything was going as Alexander had planned. Not once did he doubt his success. The dark force stored within his body grew stronger every day, and as the mother tree's power grew weak, he knew the day to realize his ambition was now just around the corner. Roman Dimitri and a coalition of the kingdoms couldn't scare him. They were nothing but worthless trash. They couldn't stand in his way nor obstruct his ultimate plan. In a year, they would finally realize that Alexander, the creator of the aura, had been the mastermind behind all the schemes that had led Salamander to terror. Do all you want, Roman Dimitri. However, the future I've prepared over history will never change, no matter what you try. And I shall surpass you with my martial arts in the near future and fulfill my ambition by driving Dimitri to chaos, Alexander said with a grin. The bright smile on his face was filled with his madness. You should look forward to that day. Croar. He manifested his mana over the altar. Darkness soon surrounded the area and instantly devoured Alexander's body. Dimitri finally restored stability in the next few days. The spies were taken care of during that time, and the private soldiers were steadily getting used to the training. Meanwhile, 3 guests came to Dimitri. The first guest arrived in Dimitri early in the morning before sunrise. His name was Hoffman, the president of Golden Bank.